Today's service builds on and kind of brings together three of my previous sermons this fall, the ones in October on accountability and boundaries, and last week's service on belonging. These are all general and widely applicable concepts, but when we get a little more specific, it can get more challenging. Still, together, we can do it. Our story tells us that words can hurt. They sure can. Sometimes the person speaking the words knows they're hurtful and says them anyway. But more often, hurtful words are spoken with no ill intent whatsoever. As Unitarian Universalists, we try not to do this, but it happens. And the more diverse our community is, the more likely this is. Because each of us has different experiences of the world, different feelings, different perspectives, different things that hurt us. And those differences become larger with any form of diversity. As a white, cis, middle class, currently able-bodied, institutionally educated woman of a certain age, my experience has a lot in common with other white, cis, middle class, currently able-bodied, institutionally educated women of a certain age. And that commonality helps us to interact within that demographic without accidentally hurting each other very often. But the fewer the commonalities, the more likely accidental hurt becomes, especially when marginalized identities are involved. There are ways in which I will never fully grasp what it's like to hold a different identity. I can't help this. My experience is mine, just as yours is yours, and the things that hurt us will never be exactly the same. But if I love you, in the capital L love sense, the love that is at the heart of this faith, if I love you, I'm called to listen to you. And if you tell me that my words or actions have hurt you, I'm called to believe you, even if what I did seems trivial to me. And I am called to do my best to understand the hurt and to change what I'm doing, even if I never intended harm, and even though I know I will never fully understand. And if I have the experience of being hurt by your words or actions, I have the right to expect that you too will listen and be open to change. I'm not talking here about name-calling or objectively belittling language with a more universal impact. I'm talking about more subtle words and actions. It might be hurtful to touch your hair, or ask where you come from or where you went to school. It might be hurtful to confuse your name with that of another person of color, to ignore your pronouns, be overly familiar, or make assumptions about who you are and what you need or can offer based on age, appearance, accent, address, and so on. These might be less obvious than name-calling, and if they were to happen once or twice, they might be no big deal. But when they happen a lot, they become a big deal, especially when they touch on marginalized identities. We're calling such words and actions subtle acts of exclusion, abbreviated SAE. This terminology comes from the work of Tiffany Jana and Michael Baran, who define subtle acts of exclusion as the subtle, confusing, insidious things that people say and do that can end up excluding people with marginalized identities. Such words and actions are often referred to as microaggressions, but that term is a bit misleading. For one thing, micro suggests that the impact is small. And aggression suggests ill intent. But Jana and Baran explain that for the most part, people are not intending to exclude others at all. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They may be trying to compliment someone, or learn more about a person, or be funny, or build closeness. All good intentions. But when it comes to being welcoming, intentions don't matter. All that matters is the impact, the experience of exclusion. The Albany UU Inclusivity Team has chosen subtle acts of exclusion as the focus for all of us for this year. And I'm glad they did. If we all can get better at noticing them, listening to those who experience them at our hands, and changing what we do, this congregation will be ever more welcoming, ever more a place where people who hold all marginalized identities can just exhale and be wholly themselves and belong. So may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and the world.
Hi, everyone. As a trans person, I'm pleased to say I'm generally treated rather well here. You know, the LGBTQ community is one of those marginalized groups that we actually try to do right by here, so thank you for that. Not everyone addresses me in the way I'd like to be addressed, but more often than not, they at least know to ask, and I guess I didn't write down how I do want to be addressed, which would be she, her, and they is fine sometimes. Maybe if I'm wearing pants that day, you can resort to they. I think anyone who comes here regularly at least has some awareness of the concept of transgenderism. And while I perfectly understand not wanting to make assumptions, I think it should be pretty obvious to most that I'm some form of non-cisgender person. Obviously, something is going on here. Something fabulous. The courteous response would be to ask me how I'd like to be addressed, and I think most people know that. And yet, I'm still misgendered at times without hesitation, which admittedly comes as a surprise, you know, here. Here, of all places, I would hope people would at least think to seek clarification. So, while minor, it's injurious when people pay it no mind and don't even bother checking with me. A cisgender person tends not to have any way of understanding how painful the accumulation of these minor injuries from being misgendered really is. It does contribute to a sense that you're not a safe person to talk to here, not really looking to have that conversation with you again. And when enough people seem unsafe or unwelcoming, it makes people like me not want to come back.
Our next reflection is from Michael Hornsby, provided on video.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Hornsby, and I'm here to tell you about an incident that involved an SAE, a subtle act of exclusion, that occurred about 10 years ago here at Albany UU. And this particular incident involved this woman who she was disabled, and she would come to the church and she would get her I think it was a rollator walker or a wheelchair out of the trunk of her car. And at this time, this was more than 2 years ago, and it was at that time, I talked to Reverend Sam about just things that I could do to help normalize diversity in the congregation, and I decided to greet to be the greeter a few times a month, at the door, and it's just to let people know that this was a place where Black people were members of the church and so on and so forth. So at this time, Lucia, my daughter Lucia she was maybe 5 years old or something like that, and she would help me. She would help to greet people, and she and I would we would run out to help this woman, Laura, who when she would pull up and she would come out and she would get her thing out, her rollator or her wheelchair out of the her scooter or whatever it was. I don't remember exactly, but it was. But she would need help to get it out, and and Lucia and I would run out and we'd help. And at first, Laura seemed she was very appreciative. She thanked us profusely, and she said. Well, she was just very grateful for it. But then, I didn't ask. I didn't ask her if she needed help or anything like that. I just proceeded to just help, in quotation marks. So then what happened was about the third or the fourth time that we did this, we went out and we and which and Laura she gave this expression. She just instead of the smile that she always greeted me with, she looked really put out, and just like, dang, like that. And I picked up on the fact that she didn't really appreciate it, and Lucia did not. She was just a really young, she was young and all that. But we had a talk about that after that incident, where I explained to her about how to help, what help means, and you have to ask for help, and you can ask people if they need the help. What we did was we just excluded her, made her feel unwelcome, you know. And see, if I had to do it over again, I would have apologized immediately, and I would have, said how sorry I was and all of that. And it wasn't that this was a big deal or anything like that, because Laura was still very cordial to us, and she she didn't leave the congregation or anything. She didn't complain, but I could tell that we had overstepped a boundary there, and so I just wanted to just say that I wanted to use this story to illustrate how the workshop that we're going to be doing in the future would show that the SAEs are for everybody. It doesn't matter, who you are. You're bound to you will probably commit an SAE at some point in the future, and because this is a religious institution, we really want to be welcoming of everybody and make everybody feel welcome. And that means that in addition to the big three, it's race or ethnicity or gender expression or gender expression, um, or even we would really need to include things like religion, because we were a creedless. We don't have a creed. We would attract people from all sorts of different religious backgrounds. So then what else? There would be sorry, I'm blanking on this, but it's ageism, social class, financial your financial situation, and all of that. So so thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Joyce Chicoine, Chair of the Inclusivity Team. My pronouns are she, her, and I just want to tell you that I share my pronouns because I want to make it easier for people who are trans and non-binary to share theirs and to feel comfortable about it. But right now, I want to tell you a little bit about the church, the Christian church that I attended when I was growing up in northern Indiana. That church had some similarities to the Albany U and some notable differences. The gorgeous, well-maintained building was located in a mixed-race, lower socioeconomic neighborhood in the heart of the medium-sized city. However, the membership of the congregation was extremely homogeneous. Members were almost exclusively white, middle class, and lived in the suburbs. If any members were LGBTQ+, they stayed in the closet. Many church members were aging, but they still had a strong choir, a strong adult choir, a youth choir, and active youth groups. I loved that church so much that I was married there in 1984. Even after I had moved to New York, I continued to subscribe to their weekly newsletter for many years in order to maintain a connection. So, what was the most important difference between this Christian church and Albany UU? In my opinion, they talked the talk, but they did not walk the walk. They looked inward and focused on spirituality, but they did not look outward. They failed to make a concerted effort to bring in diverse new people, and they did not go out of their way to make visitors feel comfortable. They did not have they did not have an inclusivity team like we do. I believe that for a congregation to be viable into the future, a conscious effort must be made to include a wide variety of people and to strive to make them feel welcome and comfortable, not just tolerated. That is why, back in November of 2016, the Albany UU Board of Trustees voted unanimously to establish a team to address inclusivity issues, focusing on institutional racism and other types of oppression. Since January of 2017, the Inclusivity Team has been on the lookout for signs of institutional racism and other forms of subtle discrimination that would make newcomers to our congregation feel unwelcome. As you know, as many of you know, about a year ago, the Inclusivity Team sponsored a congregational read of a book titled Mistakes and Miracles. The authors of that book had visited 5 UU congregations that had made a commitment to building, quote, multicultural, anti-racist, beloved community, end quote. The hope is that by learning what happened in other congregations like ours, we can do better ourselves. The next step for us was group discussions about the book to try to apply what we learned to Albany UU. We talked about strengths, we talked about our weaknesses, and our needs going forward. In our case, one common theme was, we've read the books, we've had a lot of discussions. Now, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to hold ourselves accountable to our aspirations? How are we going to genuinely become a beloved community, a diverse beloved community? And that is what brings me here today. It's easy for us to feel comfortable around people that look like us, think like us, who have similar life experiences, as Anne was telling us. We understand each other and instinctively know the right thing to say to make each other feel good. The challenge comes when we encounter someone who is different from us. As Reverend Anne said, she talked about the ways we can be different. They can be differences in race, religious background, sexual orientation, or way of expressing gender identity. Maybe the person has a disability or they're differently able and they experience the world in a unique way. Maybe they face daily challenges that we have never had to face. Whatever the difference, it behooves us to get to know them so that we can make them feel like they belong here. The thing is, we're not mind readers. We don't always know what other people are thinking or feeling, and we are bound to make mistakes. Without meaning to, we may say or do something that makes another person feel uncomfortable, like they don't belong. It's not our fault, really. We're only human. How are we supposed to know better? The answer, as Reverend Ann said, is that we teach each other. We speak up when someone experiences a subtle act of exclusion. We utilize teachable moments and listen to each other, and we keep trying to do better. This requires a skill set that does not come naturally to most of us. That is why the Inclusivity Team has been developing some workshops to teach us how to do this. We will review some key concepts to make sure we're all on the same page. Then we will talk about strategies to avoid making subtle acts of exclusion, as well as how to respond when they occur. These workshops will include role-playing so that we can practice new strategies and guided conversations to help us reflect on what we are learning. Don't worry, we won't be reinventing the wheel. We are going to use that book that Anne referred to called Subtle Acts of Exclusion, How to Understand, Identify, and Stop Microaggressions by Tiffany Jana and Michael Barron. If I were to go back to the church, my old church today, I would find the exterior shell of the building still standing and recognizable to me. But if I were to go inside, I would recognize almost nothing. Most of the woodwork has been removed or covered up. The pews have been removed. More significantly, none of the people that I knew are still there. Most of the older folks that I knew have passed away. People like my parents started attending churches, other churches out in the suburbs, where they felt more comfortable. People like me moved away entirely. Eventually, the few church members who remained merged with another congregation in the next county, kind of like if Albany decided to combine with Schenectady. And the building was sold to a church of another denomination, hence the structural changes. I'm passionate about my work with the Inclusivity Team because I don't want to see what happened to my former church happen here. I want to see the Albany UUU continue to be a vibrant, loving congregation well into the future. I want to help us reach our goal of being a multicultural, multiracial, diverse, beloved community.